Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first episode of the Choose This Day podcast. We're so happy that you're here with us. I'm your co-host, Marcus Alexander Velasquez, and I am joined with
Michael Berry. And we chose this name, Choose This Day, based on a saying in the Old Testament book of Joshua, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. And we really hope this podcast will encourage you to make the hard choices to serve the Lord. So we're both Christians. We go to the same church, and that's our goal, to help people be encouraged to make the right choices that they will not regret. And we got some different perspectives, and it's been great to get to know you over time, Marcus. And, you know, we have some differences, too.
Couple years between us.
Yeah,
just a few.
little different musical backgrounds and different talents. So
that's right.
You're in your, what age?
I am 35 years young.
35, all right. That's good. I'm 56, so
very nice.
A little wisdom. You'll catch up in the years someday.
Thank you.
Someday.
That's very nice of you.
You know, it's good. A lot of strengths. I like that you're using a computer.
Yes.
It's good, representing the younger generation.
And old school with the pen and paper. I hope you don't get any paper cuts today.
No, that should be fine. I have 3 kids in their 20s. So I always say, I joke with them, if it's not on a device, they just can't find it. They can't remember anything. So that's the era we live in. So we got a little bit of both going on.
Nice.
So we got different perspectives. Iron sharpens iron.
That's right.
But we learn from each other. And I thought a while ago, after talking with you, I'd love to record some of these conversations.
Yes, we've had some good ones.
That would help people. I think sometimes you talk to someone, you go, man, I wish other people got to hear this. So why not record it? And we've been talking about doing a podcast, partly just to encourage people to continue in the faith.
Yeah.
If I had to sum it up in one phrase, it would be, don't give up. Don't give up. I've seen so many people give up. And then also, don't be a consumer. Be active in your faith. We want to encourage people to continue and also use their gifts. The Lord's made us all different. We're different, but God can use us all.
Absolutely, yeah. I want people to be able to be comfortable asking questions. I think so many people have been shunned from asking questions. Like, you don't question this, don't question God, and then just fall in line. And that's not the human experience. That's not who we are. You know, we're inquisitive as children, you know, like you have a conversation with a kid and it's why? Well, why this? Well, why that? Well, why? And we discourage that. Be like, oh, stop asking me questions. But that's how we learn. That's how we grow. And, you know, we shouldn't stop learning and growing as adults. We should continue to grow, continue to learn and be forever students until the day that we die. So my goal with this show, at least, is to instruct people, because I hate the term blind faith. I don't like when people just fall in line because so-and-so did that, or that's what my pastor told me to do. Like, I believe every individual Christian should be equipped on their own to give a defense for their faith. Why do you believe what you believe? Be able to lead someone else to Christ. What does that mean? To know your scripture in and out, and to literally walk with God on a daily basis. That's one of the things I love about this verse that we chose in Joshua, is that choose for yourself this day. That means every single day we have an opportunity to choose God, to choose Jesus. Jesus himself said that to bear your cross, pick up your cross and bear it on a daily basis. So it means a lot to choose. And once we get that mindset that we're Christians on a daily decision to follow God, that reminds us that it's an active faith. It's not just believing and, like you said, just being a consumer. It's actually being engaged and involved.
Yeah, and this is episode 1. And every episode we want to answer a question, helps keep us grounded. And so the question for today is, how can I persevere in my faith? Now, both of us actually had a life-changing experience at age 18, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But we both seen people that did not continue on that journey that we both started on at age 18, being a follower of Jesus Christ. Sad to say, some close friends that I had that were following Jesus, some that were way ahead of me that I looked up to as mentors, didn't stay on that road. And it's always, bothered me. How can you help people? That's a lot of my role now that I'm blessed to be in as a pastor, is trying to help people continue in their faith. And so let's talk about some of that. There's obviously tons of reasons, but it's interesting to look at it. And we thought it'd be great to tell our stories to kind of get at some of the reasons why, with all of our ups and downs, all of our weaknesses and baggage, at least we're still here by the grace of God, and hopefully you get something out of that. So let's start with your story, Marcus. Tell us your life journey, your testimony, as we say.
My life journey. We don't have enough time in the day for that. No.
Give us the highlights.
I will give you the highlights for sure. So I always say when I share my story, I like sharing the bad, the ugly, my traumas, because not everybody knows happiness, not everybody knows joy, but we all know pain, and pain unites us as a people. So I want to share my pain with people so that they know that somebody else has walked in their shoes. So they know, hey, this guy knows that experience. He knows those lonely nights. He knows that anxiety, depression. He knows what it's like to question everything in your life. So I want to share that and share with my story so that I can connect with people, and then we build on that foundation. But we have to set the foundation first. So a little highlight version of my story. When I was 6 months old, my biological father left my mother and I. Thankfully, by the grace of God, another man came in and legally adopted me. It was an amazing experience. That is definitely my father. He's earned the title to this day. He's my hero, so I'm very blessed to have him in my life. I am a product of a divorced family. Unfortunately, my parents did get divorced when I was in my teenage years. I've actually gone through a divorce myself, so I'm on my second marriage now, and my traumas were very interesting. I have no problem sharing what I've gone through. I'm not embarrassed by it because I've grown from it. I've learned from it, and I'm happy to share because I want to share my story to help encourage other people on their path. So as a child, I was molested as a child. Like I said, I'm okay sharing that because I've grown from that and I'm able to help others in their journey. That led to a couple of addictions. I actually had addictions to food and addictions to pornography. I had a 15-plus year addiction to pornography, which by the grace of God, I'm now 3 years sober from that. Very happy, very grateful to God for that. When I first came to Jesus, so I was raised Catholic first. I was raised Roman Catholic. I know everything there, well, not everything, but a lot about the Catholic Church based on my experience. I went to a Catholic elementary school. I was an altar boy. I did everything, the first communion. I went through pretty much everything. Stations of the Cross. Like I remember doing all that stuff. So I knew of God. I knew of the church, but there was never really an actual deep connection to this thing we called God. It was more of go to church, stand, sit, and kneel, fall in line, and just it was a bunch of religion, at least again in my experience. So that happened when I was about 18. My father got saved. He gave his life to Jesus. He was in Florida at some church. I don't know if he just went on his own or he was invited. But the pastor that night was preaching specifically to him. They were calling him out. They were describing his details in his life situation to a T. He knew they were calling him out. So he ended up going up to the altar and gave his life to Jesus. He started attending church. I started attending church because of him. There was also a girl in my life at the time. She was a Christian. I was not. She started inviting me to church. So God knows how to get our attention because he used the girl to get mine, and that was one of the best ways to get my attention. So between those two experiences, that was my introduction to church. And so when I was there, honestly, the first thing that grabbed my attention in my dad's church, I actually met a Christian rapper, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Oh my goodness, seeing him on stages, people shouting, for him, wanting his autograph afterwards, wanting pictures with him. Some people were even singing his lyrics, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I want all of this. So I came to Jesus with the wrong intentions. I came, for prideful reasons. I wanted to be on stages. I wanted the attention under the guise of Jesus. So, but thankfully throughout that experience, being a Christian, I actually genuinely fell in love with God, had real concrete experiences with him. And so, I really gave my life over to him. I was performing all over Chicago. Different youth groups were opening the doors to me. People like, oh, you can rap? Come on down for the youth group. So I was just bouncing around so many churches. There was one church in particular that I went to, and there was a gentleman there that approached me, and he was like, I love your talent. And he said, have you ever thought of Bible college? And I was like, nope, never heard of Bible college. I don't even think I knew what Bible college was at the time. And again, God knows how to hook me, and he used pride to get me. So he said, the gentleman who approached me, he said, Bible college would be the difference of your ministry lasting 5 to 10 years to 20 to 30 years. And I was like, you got me, sign me up. So I left for 3.5 years, and I went to Oakland, California. I have my bachelor's degree in biblical studies from the School of Urban Missions. So my time out there, I ended up getting married during that time. My wife at the time ended up going to Cali with me. But that pornography addiction still followed me. And unfortunately, it was the downfall of my marriage. So when I was in Cali, I wanted to be free from it, but I was ill-equipped. I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? So I trusted in my leadership at the time. I talked to pastors. I talked to people in my Bible college. I even saw a Christian therapist before, and I kept getting the same answers. It was pray and fast, pray and fast, pray and fast. I'm like, guys, I'm doing that. I literally one time did a 19-day water fast. So I literally only drank water and ate zero food for 19 days. Lost 30 pounds. It was wonderful. Gained it all back as soon as I started eating again. But I was serious. I wanted to get healed from this issue. And everyone I was turning to at the time in the church gave me the same answer. And that answer wasn't producing the results I was looking for. So I ended up back in Chicago with my ex-wife. And the pornography was still an issue. And I ended up... my rock bottom moment, which everyone has their own individual moment. My rock bottom moment was when my ex-wife asked me to leave the house. And I was like, crap, I'm about to lose my wife. I need to get this figured out. So within a week, I ended up seeing a completely secular therapist, non-godly environment, just a therapist who knows what he's talking about. And in 2 sessions, I started seeing change in my life. And I was like, I'm a very logical person. I love logic. I love being analytical. And I took at face value the information that was presented with me at the time. I said, okay, well, path A was Christianity. I served God for 10 years, moved across country for him because he told me to go to a Bible college across the country. And I pleaded and begged for God to take this thing away from me. And I didn't get the results I wanted. 2 sessions, which equates to 2 hours in an ungodly secular environment. I started seeing change in my life. And I was like, okay, hold up. Something's not adding up. So since path A didn't work and path B did work, path A must be false and path B must be true. It wasn't a fair judgment at the time, but that's where I was at in my mind with my emotions. That's how I felt. So it was the eventual decline of my faith. I didn't let go of it overnight, but eventually I started believing less and less, praying less and less, reading my Bible less and less, going to church less and less, to the point where I claimed the title of atheist for 3 years. Which is really interesting conversations because I was an atheist with a Bible college degree. So that was a great icebreaker for a lot of conversations with people. During that time, I ended up diving headfirst into therapy, into mental health awareness, got to the root cause of a lot of my childhood traumas and dramas and things that I've gone through, healed tremendously from it, to the point where I started a show on YouTube called Therapy Thursdays because I was so involved and enamored with therapy and wanted to grow so much that I wanted to share that information with other people. Grew tremendously from that. Jesus was not a thought in my mind at the time. And then I actually got an invite to go to a leadership conference, a leadership development conference. It was 2.5 days long. God was so preparing me for that event because I didn't lose my job, but my boss at the time called me and said, Marcus, I don't know how to tell you this, but I can't pay you this week. So I don't know if the funds were mismanaged or whatever, but I still had a job technically, but I was making $0 an hour. So I was making no money. I quickly depleted my savings. So literally when I got this invite to this conference, I literally said, I have nothing else to do. So I felt like God cleared my plate of any excuses I could have possibly used from getting to this conference. Now, the conference itself wasn't advertised as a Christian conference, but the main trainer there was a Christian, and he incorporated a lot of Jesus and scripture into his teaching. So when I was there, I kind of just chose to eat the meat and spit out the bones. So I took in what I liked at the time, the psychology, all the therapy stuff, and all the Jesus stuff. I was like, okay, whatever. But little did I know the scripture and the Jesus talk was seeping into my mind throughout that weekend. And so the conference was over like around a Saturday evening. The next day, Sunday, I remember being in my room by myself, and I kind of was pondering over the weekend that I had just went through. And I literally, if anything, it was like a vision that God gave me. And I saw all the different events of my life, different skills that I picked up along the way came together at one point and was being utilized all in this one path. And I saw that there was someone behind the scenes orchestrating my life. And it was so abundantly clear that I would have been a fool to deny it. So at the time, I was in my room all by myself, and I gave my life back to Jesus. I had prayed for the first time in like 3+ years, gave my life to God, started going to a church. And now, because of those experiences of being so heavy into church, theology, and my experiences coupled with my love for mental health awareness, my focus in life is the union of the two. So now I want to, equip those in the mental health secular world with Jesus, and those in the Jesus world and church world with mental health awareness, because I believe life is truly a balance between the two. I think Jesus and therapy is the ultimate combination for life. And even Jesus was our example in that. Jesus was fully God and fully man, meaning he embraced his spirituality and relationship with God, and he embraced his humanity to the point where he's crying over Lazarus, knowing that he was about to resurrect him from the dead. That blows my mind. Like, you're going to bring him back. Why are you crying? But he embraced his humanity. So that's what I want to do. It's the bridge of an intimate relationship with God and becoming the best humans we can be through therapy and self-awareness and growing. And that's kind of where I'm at. I want to share those experiences and that viewpoint that I've learned throughout the years with people on the show.
Yeah, I love hearing people's stories, their life journey. And it's interesting. Everybody's different. And it's amazing when you see how God interacted just in the right ways and the right times. As you said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. A couple of things. You grew up in Chicago. What neighborhood?
I grew up on the north side. I probably bounced around like Bucktown, Humboldt Park area.
I guess the north side. Or what high school?
Walter Payton High School.
Okay.
First class.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you come to Christ at age 18, and you're a rapper. That's one thing I never got into. I was never a rapper, by the way, dude. So that's a talent you got. So you use your musical talent, which is kind of a double-edged sword. It's great in some ways, but as you said, it kind of gave you a platform before you had the character, maybe, right?
And that's a great point that you brought up. From that experience, I've learned that character matters more than anything else, because God has blessed me with talents. It's really easy to distract people with your talents.
Yeah.
Very easy, like scarily easy. And then you can assimilate yourself to the church and learning Christianese, the right things to say, the right places to go, the right time to stand, sit, and kneel, and call everyone brother and sister, and God is good. And you can learn the lingo really well, but behind the scenes is a different story.
It's a heavy responsibility.
Yeah.
I actually have a number of family members that are real musically talented. I'm not. But I think sometimes the Lord didn't let me have that talent. Maybe I couldn't have handled it.
Maybe.
Seriously, it's not easy. So you're a rapper, then you become a Bible school student.
That's right.
And I know you went to school, you said it was hardcore. You guys even went on the street, preached.
So the school was really heavy into street ministry. We were doing a lot of street evangelism. We did street preaching to the point where we would set up speakers and microphones on the street corner and would just preach to the public, whoever was within earshot, whoever wanted to hear us, whoever wanted to talk, we were willing to talk to them. Our program was so ministry intense that 2 out of our 3 years of the program, we would actually fly down to New Orleans during the Mardi Gras festival, and we would street preach at Mardi Gras.
Looking for a fight there. You're like, I was going to go.
We really were, yeah. I mean, it was bad sometimes. Like, there's stories of people getting hit, feces being thrown at people while preaching too, but we also had salvations. We also had people getting supernatural healings on the street too. So it was beautiful overall.
I did some street preaching over time. Never went there, but different times. It's not the most effective, I think, but sometimes the Lord uses it, and it really grows a spiritual backbone in you to speak about the Lord even in those settings. So
absolutely
interesting. So you're super committed Christian, and yet we all struggle. And you talk about some of your struggles in the background. But just say again, what is it that this therapist told you that wasn't a Christian, but it helped you overcome some of your problems and addictions? What'd they tell you?
Yeah, to be honest, it was the methodology of how they were going about it, which was, let's dig deep. Let's go back into your past traumas and figure out the genesis of the addictions and the pain and where it was at. I never heard that from anyone else. It was always like focusing on the here and now, which was the praying, fasting now. But if the now behavior was influenced by the past, we need to go to the past, fix that so that the behavior doesn't continue forward. So that was the difference in perspective. The therapist helped me to dig deep, face my traumas. I had to relive some of that old pain, but at least it was pain with a purpose. And I've always told myself that I'm okay with pain as long as it leads to a purpose, because I was already in pain before and I got nothing out of it. So if this path of healing is going to help me and this pain has a purpose, I'm okay going through pain as long as it leads to eventual healing.
Yeah.
Yes,
you think if only you'd met a Christian therapist at that time that could have helped.
But
this was
absolutely
the path you had to walk.
So that's my
And-
story and why I'm
Yeah.
here, what God has brought me through, why I'm excited to do this podcast. So I know the people are excited
Yeah,
to hear from the one and only Pastor Mike. So we want to hear your story
and
too.
just to wrap up, we met at church here, and you were real involved at a church on the north side. Met your wife. Shout out to your wife.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
Shout out to my wife, Holly, my
Yeah, that's
beautiful
right. You
wife.
get 3 shout outs per episode.
That's
so
right.
Your first one, all right?
I'll take full advantage of
There
them.
you go. And so we met here. You wound up attending New Life, and I remember first time I heard your story at Dunkin' Donuts, and it was really interesting hearing that and how the Lord works. So yeah, my journey a little different, a lot different, but some things in common. God works in different lives. So I grew up in the suburbs. Actually, was born Northwestern Memorial Hospital. My mother was a nurse at that hospital, and she gave birth. I like to say she finished her shift after she gave birth, but she always corrects me when she hears me say that, so makes the story better. But I was born there in Chicago, grew up in the suburbs, and over the years, talking to tons of people in the ministry, I've realized, I'm so blessed I didn't have the trauma that so many people have.
Yeah.
I didn't go through any sort of abuse, divorce, a lot of that, not addiction. So I'm thankful. Love my parents. My parents are still around. Thank God. I was the firstborn of 3, so shout out to my parents, brother, and sister. That's just one shout out.
One,
to all
you got
of
2
them,
more.
Yeah, I just throw them all in on one. My dad actually grew up with a lot of trauma, more than my mother. He moved every year. His family had a lot of problems, and every year he was in a different school. So he said, I want to raise my kids in one school district. He would talk about that, and he did it. They managed to provide a stable household. He was an engineer, computer programmer. I got none of those gifts, but thank God I grew up without that. But at the same time, we didn't know Jesus. We were not a Christian family. Actually went to church. It was a Protestant church. I was baptized as a baby, but it was one of those churches that's essentially a social club. Jesus is an example. The Bible has some good ideas, but it's not authoritative in that type of church. Do what you want. So that's, I grew up thinking church was just some positive thinking, nice social club. Two things that I think hit me and were kind of in the background was I was around 2 deaths that always kind of lingered as black clouds over our family. One was my uncle died in a fire when I was 3, and that was a tragic thing. The family, whenever it would come up, there's always a sadness and a despair about that, and it sunk into me. I didn't know about it at 3, but as I grew up, I would always hear the stories. But that did hit me. I think it planted a seed of life is short and nothing's going to last forever. And then when I was 6 years old, a friend of mine who was 5 lived on the same street, ran out in the street, got hit by a car and killed.
Wow.
And I knew that family real well for years and years. So always this heavy sadness, grief, mourning with no resolution and no hope. And that really planted a seed in me that life stinks and then you die. So I grew up in a real materialistic area. My parents weren't that way that much, so I'm thankfully hardworking, but they weren't carried away with chasing wealth. But that was a culture around there, especially in the high school I went to, drew from a wider area. Thankfully, I didn't get caught up in that, the love of money. Didn't really aspire to that. Partly, I think, because I realized life's going to end anyway. I'd been around some senior citizens with our grandparents were around, and I would see seniors that in the world's eyes had made it, but were not happy, not happy. I thought, is that you chase this money, success, you work everything you have just to get here? Grumpy, angry, upset, bitter people. I don't want to do that. So I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I didn't pursue the path that most of the kids in high school were going toward. Had a chance to go to college, so I said I want to do something. I didn't have anything else that looked better, so I wound up going to Western Illinois University, which back in the 80s was one of the finest academic institutions. No, it wasn't. It's not true. It's the one I could get into. Maybe it's better now, but at the time it was just what I could get into. But so went away there. Good experience. Got to meet a lot of different people. But in high school, I love sports as a young guy, like most young guys. The only thing that kept me from playing more sports was a lack of size and speed. All I needed, bro. I could have been something. I had the attitude, had the trash talk.
Nice.
Didn't have the skills. But no, that was, I think, play ball a lot. Didn't get to play on teams very long because I wasn't that good at anything. But then I discovered alcohol in high school. We began to drink a lot, my friends and I. So that was a big deal, big problem. Went away to college, a lot of alcohol. So first semester, that was a main thing. So after a few months, I was already pretty unhappy. Age 18, I'd say my My rock bottom was in November of my first year at college, right, first semester. We used to go to the liquor store, 18 years old, and wait outside there till someone was going in to buy something, give them a few dollars, ask them if they'd buy something for us. Crazy, but people would do it. Half the people would buy for underage people back then. So one night I wanted to get something to drink. None of my friends wanted to go with me, so I went on my own. It's dark. It's cold out. It's November. I'm standing outside a liquor store. It's like a Tuesday. It's not even a weekend. And there's nobody there. No cars pulling up. The only car there is the guy that works there. And I began to realize there's something wrong with me. I'm like a loser. I'm the only guy out here waiting for somebody to maybe buy me some alcohol that I'm going to drink alone. It's not even fun all alone, but I was compelled because that was the only thing that had made me happy at that point. So I really was at a bad spot. Didn't know how to change, though. Did not know how to change. Thankfully, about a month later, December, right before the semester ended, one night it's very cold out. I was going to walk to a party, but it's so cold and rainy. Didn't want to go. It was that freezing rain. And I remember I was in this one room talking to this guy in the dorm, and he was different than most of us. Didn't really hang out with him. He didn't drink, didn't talk the way most people talk, didn't talk about women the way most of the guys did. Something different about him, but a cool guy. We liked him. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to church tonight. You want to go with me?" Which was odd on a Saturday night. But I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." Just because I wanted to hang out with him. I wasn't seeking the Lord. And I figured it would just be a pep talk, nice something to do. I only went because I liked this guy, hang out with him. They had a car, so a few guys piled in a car. We go to this church. It was actually an Assembly of God church, which is a group that preaches the gospel, which I had never heard, Bible believing, and it was a traveling evangelist, and it was a night where they encouraged people to invite college students. So he did that. I show up as one of those students. Worship I had never experienced, really shocking. Hear a message, straightforward message from the Bible, and it really sank in that I'm my problem.
Yeah,
I'm a bad guy. I'd never heard that. It's not circumstances, not other people. And I thought Jesus was just a martyr. Great man, taught great things, got caught by the bad guys, left an example for us. Never even thought about the resurrection. That was never an issue in the church I grew up in. It was more just, a general feel good, be good. But I heard the gospel for the first time. Cut me to the core. The guy gave an altar call, and I received the Lord that night. Felt the Holy Spirit come into me. I really did. And I didn't have the language for it. I didn't understand it. No one had talked to me about that before, but I was different. I really was. And right away, I started to have a conviction that I couldn't do certain things. Certain conversations I would just pull away from, didn't want to be around people when they were doing certain things, talking a certain way. Took a while to stop drinking and, get carried away with things. And, of course, a long journey, a lot of ups and downs. But I was different. I had a conviction, began to have a hunger and thirst for the Bible and fellowship. Wound up going to church. These guys, although they invited me there, they actually went to a Baptist church. So I always tell Pentecostals, I could have been Pentecostal, but they didn't follow up on me. So wound up going to a Baptist church, which was a place that, looking back, had a lot of weaknesses. It was a church of about 40 people. The music was terrible. There wasn't much activity, but they were legitimate Christians. The pastor you wouldn't call him a great pastor, but you know what? He actually believed in Jesus. He preached with a passion. It helped me a lot. I'd never been around that. Went to a small group, a campus group called Navigators, and they taught me to pray, read the Bible. A lot of good things I learned there. So I was determined just to live the Christian life. I was a communications major. Hopefully you can tell that from this podcast. Just kidding. No, the reason I was a communications major, I figured business, that's where most of the jobs are. I couldn't handle accounting and calculus, honestly. So I figured this is kind of the back door to business. So if you're a communications major, shout out to you. It's business light. You know it is. Don't be offended, okay? But maybe it is for you. But that was my idea. I'll go communications, kind of back door. And somehow, so my senior year, didn't know where I was going to work after that. And I'm thinking, I need to do something. I was kind of in a crisis time. What am I going to do? Most of my friends in college lived around the Peoria area there. Didn't want to live there. Wanted to come back to Chicagoland, but all my friends from high school, they were down the road partying and pursuing money and things that I just couldn't live that lifestyle. Didn't have a home church back in the suburbs. So I began to pray, really pray, Lord, what should I do with my life? One of the guys that had always been talking to us in this small group about Moody Bible Institute. I'd never heard of it. I had no interest. I would tell him, I don't want to be a leader. I'm going to be a Christian. I don't want to lead anything. I don't want to go to Bible school. Someone else can lead. I'll support them. I'll work, give money. I'll be there. I'll help out, move some chairs, okay?
Nice.
But as I was praying about what I should do with my life, I felt like the Lord said to me, Moody. And I really did. And so
You sure he wasn't just calling you Moody?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Just make sure.
Moody Bible Institute, maybe that was there too. So I applied and got in. I actually had a pretty thin resume, but by the grace of God, I got in. They had a 1-year program back then, which was great for me. By the way, don't tell Pastor Mark I only went to Moody 1 year. Okay, as far as he knows, I just went there. Okay, but they did have a 1-year program. I've talked to him about it. It was an awesome experience. So our senior pastor here, Mark Job, is the president of Moody Bible Institute. I was blessed to go there 1 year, but made a ton of friends that really were at a different level of Christian living. A lot of experiences I had never encountered.
Shout
Got to
out
do
to
some
Pastor
ministry
Mark.
on the street, yes, and do some ministry, all different things. Go to a bunch of different churches, learn about the Christian life, learn the Bible. 1 year at the end of that, then I was stuck with what am I going to do? Was not ready to lead or anything at a church. I was still a pretty young Christian. My roommate was going to this church called New Life Community Church, southwest side of Chicago. He kept inviting me, and I had prayed, and I felt like the Lord told me Chicago. He's got a church for me in Chicago. But I kept visiting churches on the north side. And I told my friend, I said, I don't think I would fit in the southwest side. I'm going to find something on the north side. Finally, I went with him one time, 44th and Paulina, and walking past all the factories. We walked. He didn't have a car. I got off the train, walked. I was like, where is this? I've never been in this type of neighborhood. Walked in the church. I felt like the Lord said, this is home. Awesome service.
Wow.
Tremendous worship. Never been around worship like that. Pastor Mark preached. He's 1 year older than me, so, and the culture of the church was the 20s at that time. Everyone was in their 20s pretty much. I was like, this is great. And the other thing I was hoping to meet was a wife, and she was right there. Debbie, shout out to Debbie. Met her right there. By the way, her maiden name was Gonzalez, so I always like to throw that out. It gives me a little bit of credibility.
Yeah, I just found out recently your wife's half Mexican.
Yes, she is. So I always like to say I married a Gonzalez. It gives me a little more credibility.
There you go.
So we started dating after a little while. I needed to grow. I knew shouldn't date right away, but we eventually started dating, got married in 92. We're blessed to have 3 children in the 1990s who are all in their 20s now. Shout out to them. And long story short, I worked several jobs, learned the ministry a lot, was blessed around, again, Pastor Mark, Pastor John Palmieri, a bunch of people, Asa and others, Tony Wassel, learned a lot from them. At a time the church was small. I got to see ministry, learn it, found my voice, so to speak. Small groups are where I really felt like I could fit in, helping people to persevere, just like we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Get to know people last. In 1994, the door opened up for some more people to go on staff, so myself and Asa went on staff. We served together for a long time, and he's now at the Norwood Park location. But been here ever since, and somehow was able to persevere. I've seen a lot of people that I thought were far ahead of me that didn't last. And we'll get into some more of that. But I would say staying in fellowship, also having responsibility is essential.
Yeah.
If I don't have responsibility, I could get lazy or get distracted real fast. But I think having responsibility is vital.
Yeah. 2 things I want to point out from your story, which thank you for sharing that, by the way. Number one is you guys can see the proof right here that do not underestimate simply inviting someone to church, because you could be inviting the next Pastor Mike. And then the second thing, too, is that one thing that our stories have in common is we ended up at a crossroads and we sought the Lord for guidance. And I think that's a great thing to point out. I think it's commonplace in Christianity to talk about, seeking God for guidance and he'll guide you. But seriously, he will guide you. But the difference is are we listening? Because someone can't give you directions if you're not listening. And God will provide. He provided for Pastor Mike. There was a time for me when I was in Bible college. I was only there for 3.5 years, and I'm from Chicago. So I was nearing the end of my Bible college career, and I was wondering, do I stay here? Do I go back to Chicago? So I did the same thing. I sought the Lord. I prayed and fasted. And I'm very blessed that God speaks to me in I would say unique ways. I believe that if we're going to have a relationship with God, we should see God acting in supernatural ways, that it shouldn't just be talk. Even Paul talks about that in the New Testament. He says that that Christianity, that the gospel, that God is not a God of just talking, he's a God of power. So I believe that we should see the power of God on a consistent basis. So for me, God has blessed me with literally dozens, I've lost count at this point, dozens of prophetic dreams. And what I mean by that is I'll have a dream that's extremely vivid, extremely detailed, and I remember every single detail when I wake up. That's how I distinguish between a regular dream and a prophetic dream, is I remember all the details. So God has literally shown me me secrets about other people in dreams. I'll approach them the next day and talk to them about it. They're shocked, jaw on the floor, like, how did you know that about me? And it's like, well, God showed me. And I believe that just comes from intimacy with him. But going back to my time in Cali, I didn't know if I should stay or leave because I had made great connections there. I had a phenomenal church, which was called Templo de la Cruz. Shout out to Templo. I love you guys. Miss you. So I didn't know what I was going to do. So again, praying and fasting, God gave me a prophetic dream. In this dream, I was back on my block here in Chicago, but I saw it in a new way. Like it looked like a rainforest. It was lush. The green leaves were so vibrant. There were birds flying around. And so it was a beautiful scenery. And I recognized I was on my old block. So I was like, oh, well, I'm here. Let me go visit my old house. I walked to my old house and I grabbed the doorknob of the fence that's in front of the house. And as soon as I grabbed the doorknob, my old neighbor shows up and she asked me, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to visit my old house. And she tells me, that's not your house. And I'm like looking at her like, what do you mean? I know where my house is. So with my hand on the knob, I look up and realize it wasn't my house. And what she told me and said that you've been gone for so long that you've forgotten where your home is. And to me, that was God speaking. He was like, go back home. Chicago's your home. Even though you had good time out here, you need to go back home to Chicago. So I just think that's great that, at Crossroads for us, and then of course for everybody, is that we seek God's guidance and he will provide.
Yeah, everyone's story is different. And I hope that this episode number 1 helps you to think whatever your journey is, God is writing a story through you. Let him work in you. It's going to look different than other people, but it's a beautiful story. God is at work in your life. So how can I persevere in the Lord? Hopefully our stories help you think through how you can continue on. If people turn away from the Lord, there's still hope, and we're going to get into that in the next episode, answering the question, how can a prodigal, someone that's turned away, how can a prodigal turn back to the Lord? Hope to see you next time, episode 2.
See you then.